when Jesus is arrested and tried by the Sanhedrin with many false witnesses accusing him, saying that he claimed to subvert Mosaic law by what he taught, accusing him of blasphemy. Those false accusations are disproved by what Jesus says in today's gospel. And that's this. He says to them, "Listen to what the Pharisees say. They have been instructed with the law, and they have been instructed with the care of promoting and sustaining and upholding the law. Listen to what they say. However," Jesus continues, "do not do what they do." Jesus indicates that these Pharisees aren't following their own spiritual counsel. They use the law, he's saying, as a way of suppressing others, as a way of lording authority over others, and also as a way of being self-righteous, sanctimonious even. He says that they like to widen their phylacteries and lengthen their tassels. Now, to the first century Jews who are hearing Jesus preach this, they understand exactly what those objects are. We might not necessarily, we certainly don't use them in the Catholic Church, and Reformed Jews today don't necessarily use them. What though is a phylactery? And what is the tassel? It's this, my dear friends in Christ. The phylactery is a leather box to which are tied leather bands. And according to Mosaic law, men 13 years and older were required to wear them to keep God's law before their head and around their arm. And so that was the Mosaic law, to keep God's law before your mind and by your arm, wearing it as a pendant on your head and wearing it as a pendant on your arm, literally. Now, Reformed Jews take this less literally. They take it to understand you keep God's law in your mind, by your mind, close here, and close to your arm, close to your heart. Orthodox Jews interpret it literally. And so if you see photographs, or if you go to, for example, Israel, Jerusalem, the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, you'll see that very pious, devout Jewish men will have a black leather box attached to their forehead, as well as attached to their arm. And then there will be bands of leather that will attach the phylactery around the head, and then also around the arm, and it wraps and wraps and wraps, and then wraps around the fingers. And so men wear this when they're praying their morning prayers. To widen the phylactery would mean to let that be seen as really an ostentatious, self-centered display of piety. It's not intended to be seen by anyone else. It's intended to be between you and God. Yes, it's visible, but nevertheless, it's meant to convey your willingness to obey God's law, not to be lauded by everyone else because you are wearing it. The tassel. Every Jewish male wears a prayer shawl underneath his clothing, or at least Orthodox Jews do, and perhaps even some Reformed Jews do as well. This prayer shawl is called a talit, and the talit is in some senses visible underneath their clothing, because the tassels are meant to hang outside of the clothing. And the tassels all add up. There are about 630 of them, and that's the number of laws that are in the Mosaic commandments, or the Mosaic law. Many of you have seen crochet blankets that have tassels at the end of them. And if you count the number of tassels on the talit, you'll get 630 or so. So, my friends in Christ, the talit would be worn by, again, pious Jews for religious reasons, for reverent and pious reasons. And oftentimes, throughout the day in prayer, they would finger or touch these talit, these tassels, to remind them to uphold God's law. In fact, actually, when the woman who's been hemorrhaging for 12 years follows Christ, and without saying a word to him, but says to herself, "If I but touch the tassel of his cloak, I will be healed." It's that tassel, the talit, his prayer shawl, that she's referring to. So, Jesus finds objection with the Pharisees who use these pious instruments of prayer as a means of self-acclaim, as a means of being seen as holy in the eyes of others, of self-righteousness. Jesus tells those who are listening to him, do not follow the example of the Pharisees. Follow their words, yes. Pray piously, reverently, yes. But do not do so in a manner that is self-righteous. Do so in a way that opens one's heart wide to God's mercy and his love, enough to be merciful to others. Saints in the making. You and I, obviously, we don't have a phylactery, we don't have a talit, but nevertheless, we do have a heart that has been consecrated to God, and a heart that houses the Holy Trinity, a heart and soul that houses Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. By virtue of our baptism, you and I, we have become temples of the Holy Spirit. We house the Holy Trinity within us. And so, my dear friends of Christ, we're not called to widen the phylactery or to lengthen our tassel. Instead, we are called to widen our hearts with mercy and forgiveness. We are called to lengthen our patience and our charity so that others who see us might see Christ and might feel his love, his tenderness, and his warmth. My dear friends of Christ, let us, you and me, let us widen our hearts so that we, you and I, can make space for grace.